Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So just before we start off with the schedules, I know that there's going to be some discussion around individual areas, and are you all clear where the individual areas are in your packet, because they don't seem to line up with the page numbers in mine? So I just think we need to be able to refer to those when
We can step you through as we go through the schedule.
do you mind? Thank you.
We also have to assist with the discussion, the deliberations. We have prepared some maps, which Eric can put up. That gives us an aerial of the particular areas we're talking about.
Thank you. That's good. So as we get down into individual areas in the district, and those items come up, and I know Councillor Gottlieb raised Hotwater Beach earlier on, and I'd like to make some comments about that. I think these are very relevant, but we have an idea of what we're talking about on the next.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Okay. Right, we are going to go to, we've got part A, which is the Matariki King's birthday, which we had already addressed. Have we covered that, or do we need to revisit those?
I feel comfortable.
Okay, so we'll take those as done. We're going to go back to objective 1 of the proposed policy, which is page 161. And we've got objective 1, minimizing potential danger, distress and nuisance to the community generally and to native wildlife.
Your worship, I'll put objective 1 up on the screen, which is the page number that we talked about, 161. Just to clarify, this is what staff are recommending, no change to what was consulted on, although there were submissions. And in that staff analysis recommendation, we did talk about the balance between protected wildlife and other policy objectives such as recreation areas for dogs. And quite often the bylaw is trying to find that balance between dog owners and lovers, people who want to use public space that don't like dogs, and protection of wildlife. So we're recommending no change. If there wants to be, if there needs to be a discussion on that, I correct your direction about what in that objective we don't like. Staff need to do further work.
Okay. Right, are there any questions or discussions around objective 1, what's proposed, and the staff recommendation that there is no change?
Through the chair, just for the sake of some clarification, so I can see what objective 1 is. It's the overall positioning statement in regard to this, but then you look at the specifics of what we have done, for example, with Kuatunu, where we have made some changes as a result of input from DOC. So it's not no change. There's no change to the objective, but
Yeah, so exactly.
some of the flow through from that has got into what we're looking at.
Correct, and the best time to discuss and debate that would be
Yeah, we'll be
scheduled.
when we get those.
If you're comfortable with the overarching policy position, then we would.
So we're looking at and signing off on the policy position.
Yes.
Okay, then we can get down and discuss it when we get to the schedule.
At the back of the policy is your schedule, which is what we were referring to, what I was referring to earlier, where we have a schedule, and that schedule is the same schedule you will find in the bylaw. The bylaw gives effect to what the policy says.
So what we're discussing in the report here is the policy, the objective of the policy.
These words up here.
No, actually, the policy is in the photo image. If you scroll up, that is the objective, and then 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 clarifying, this is kind of clarifying statements about what council will do to achieve that objective, what Tim's Coromandel expects of, council expects of dog owners, and then what is covered by, what would be covered by the bylaw. So that it kind
And
of
we're recommending no change
on any of it. It's not on any of it.
So it's quite high level, it's not getting down into specific details. It says restrictions to dog access to particular locations, but it doesn't go into detail, which is covered in the schedule. Have I got that right there?
Yes.
So in terms of policy, are we all on the same page as far as the policy is concerned?
Absolutely.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Go to objective 2, which again, high level policy, encouraging and supporting responsible dog ownership. Oh, sorry.
I wonder if it would be appropriate to have in that responsible dog ownership and welfare. Because I've heard what people have been saying about how there doesn't seem to be much in here for dog. Well, not that people are being ignored, but that's just saying responsible dog ownership. I think is a general objective, having the well-being of the dog, the welfare of the dog, so that it can be allowed on beaches at certain times and restrictions and
So if you go down, yeah.
Yeah. And I know it's further down, I just wondered as an overriding.
It's sort of a tautology that you would look after your dog, yeah, but it's open to the council if it wants to be.
It's
That.
Yeah. And again, it's probably also captured in
It's
the third objective.
objective 3, thank you.
My thought was, and I might have gone off on a different tangent,
No,
Martin,
yeah, sorry, no, you're
was the health and well-being and those health and well-being pillars. So whilst we have to acknowledge the health and well-being of flora and fauna, part of a vibrant community is that people are responsible and are able to. I'm kind of drawing a line
Yeah.
between some of our strategic goals and what you're saying about. Because I know that a lot of those submissions which I have read have been about not necessarily the word trauma, but angst and stress around being unable to access beaches with their dogs. I'm trying not to get into detail, but give you an overarching idea of
So
where
if
we're
you
going
look at
with it.
objective 3.
Yeah, can I withdraw my previous question? I apologise, it's on objective 3.
Thank you. So if you look at objective 3, I think what we're concerned about, Delhi, probably is more adequately covered in 3 rather than 2. And I think from what I'm seeing, what Mark is saying is covered in there, it's just not in the type.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favour?
Aye.
Objective 3, page 165. Enabling people to enjoy the benefits of dog ownership and providing for the controlled exercise and recreational needs of dogs and their owners. So again, not getting into the specific details area by area, but it's an overall policy that intends to cover what we need to do to look after dogs and their owners.
I think through the chair that the green writing underneath what Tim's Coromandel Council do, I think we need to really take that statement very seriously because there's a huge amount of frustration by dog owners over inconsistency. I'm allowed here but not there, there's a sign saying this but not that, and they find the website incredibly difficult to understand.
So do we need to
So we've got it in the policy, but we need to actually pay more than lip
So
service.
you're talking more about the clarity of communication and the clarity of the requirements by specific area, and so that people clearly understand. And I have heard that there's some confusion out there. So
Your worship, again, if we come back to the comprehensive report where we
Yeah.
have we've analysed the submissions, we've put the staff analysis and recommendation in there, and then our recommendation is that that's a operational matter that the compliance team can pick up. It's, we've heard the submittals, we agree with the submittals. It doesn't need to be a change to the policy wording. It's just about the implementation. So again, that's why it's recommending no change, because it's up there. It's just about them getting effect to it.
Thank you. Are you comfortable with that?
Yep.
Right, any other discussion around?
Yes, I have a question.
And then,
I'm just looking at the point under, point number 2 under maintain rules on dog access. And that specifically talks about dates and times within that area.
Yes.
Yep, got it.
And has a reference to Schedule 1, to the
Right,
schedule.
but then that's varied in other places according to location.
So are you concerned that there's a potential inconsistency between what's specified here and in other parts of the schedule?
I agree, and I think it just picks up on the point that was made earlier in regard to the confusion of information. That someone's reading this and they see the specification as to what dates and times, and then find that on their particular beach it's a different date and time sequence.
Yeah. So
Is that an issue?
I think the bylaw is well laid out in that. What the policy is saying here is that we've got 2 general restrictions, and they are our summer restrictions between 20 December and 31 January and holiday weekends. And then you've got your wider second set of restrictions from the wider Labour weekend to 1 March, which are more your wildlife restrictions. Every beach, other than Hot Water Beach, for its we'll get to, every other beach will fit into one of those.
Yeah.
Two. So the pilot, the policy is just trying to give consistency that local areas will either be not restricted at all, or restricted, or completely prohibited if that's it. But otherwise, the time of season areas will be one of those 2 out there.
Yeah.
It's just setting up the, exactly what it says. This is the way we're going to restrict dogs across the district. We're going to have some rules about all dates and times, and we're going to have some rules about timing and season in specific areas.
And so just to show you what that looks like when we get to the schedule, is that you can see at the top here, we have your rules and then the time and date restrictions, which are over in the far right boxes. When we get into each local area, so Big Sandy Bay falls into a restriction just over the summer, that stuff period. So Surds Bay, so it's Little Bay, some like Port Jackson have a restriction over the wider Labour weekend. So it's just the 2 types of restrictions that we apply in the schedule.
The policy is just setting that, it's setting that framework up, basically.
I can understand the need for consistency. I know how practical that is on a district-wide basis, because you will always have people in different parts of the district who say, well, why have you got restrictions here? Because we lived here for 30 years and there's nobody on the beach between these hours, so we want our own times and here's our submissions. And they will not match up with Buffalo Beach or Cook's Beach or something. So,
I really like how the visual signage on every beach, you know, along the access points really leaves you in no doubt of whether you should or shouldn't be there in terms of, and I know it can be a pain and it's not consistent, but I think that the signage that staff have implemented works really well in supporting this.
and thank you. I think that's an important element, because I'm sure this is challenging stuff. You look at Whangatana, how many accesses are there on Whangatana Beach?
24.
But the point is that the majority of the beaches under 1/7, it doesn't matter what access way you go down, the rule is the same. And I think one of the successes of our previous bylaw, and given the fact that we have so many visitors and holiday homeowners, is coming down and having some consistency. So whether you are going to a beach in Whitianga, a beach in Whangatana, you know that if you're in those time periods, there is going to likely be a restriction. rather than turning around and saying, okay, Buffalo Beach will be 10 till 4 because it's quieter than Whangataa, that might be 8 till 9, and people being called out. That's very hard from the enforceability, it's very hard from the communication perspective, and I think one of the successes of our bylaw is that we have consistency across the district.
Can I just make a point? My wife noted one day we were walking down to the beach, I can't remember its accessed, but there were 9 signs just before you went on the beach. And she said it's just sign page, you wouldn't know what, there's just too many signs to read.
All to do with dogs?
No, just everything,
Yeah.
everything, just totally,
All to do with council or?
sort of, I think. I just couldn't, I should have taken the photograph, but there was just so many signs, you didn't look at them. There's too many to read.
I think that point's been raised a few times now, it's becoming an issue, so. Okay, so let's get back to the policy here. Given that what I'm hearing is there are policies which do apply district-wide, which can be addressed in this. I'm not convinced that there's a simpler way to do it. This is complicated stuff. So where I'm sitting, I'm comfortable to go with the staff recommendation on this here, knowing that it gets more detail as we get into the schedule per area. So are we okay with that?
Okay.
All right. I'll put the motion, objective 3, all those in favour?
No,
Very, thank you. Objective 4, enabling to the extent that is practicable the public to use streets and public amenities without fear of attack or intimidation by dogs. So page 116. I'm going to take this as read. Is there any discussion around this? Okay, there being none, I'll put the motion. Objective 4, all those in favour?
aye.
You. Schedule 1, page 168. General dog access rules. We get into the signs. Okay, so this is going to get into the detail. How involved do we as a council need to be? Do we just go to the track changes? Because I'm guessing that that's where the proposed changes are as opposed to what used to be.
Yeah, so your worship, we could do it 2 different ways. We could go ward by ward through the schedule, or we could go through the staff recommendation and then hear what else you want us to go to. Whatever is easiest for the room. So
let's start with district wide, and I think when we get to ward by ward, this is where we're starting to get fairly significant levels of submissions and some of that discussion.
So just to quickly talk to that, so generally our district-wide rules are that beaches are appropriate exercise locations, and so they are generally off leash, other than when the restrictions, sometimes restrictions come in place. Everywhere else that's a public place, we want dogs to be on lead, so that's when we talk about footpaths, roads, car parks, anything else that's public. The dogs should be under control and on lead. And then we have made some linking back to the policy objective for when people should be safe and fear of attack. Places like sports services, children's playgrounds, skate parks, we've said that there should be a 5 metre buffer. So prohibited within that 5 metre of that playground. So those are your district-wide rules that.
Thank you. So that's on a district-wide basis. Can I have any discussion around the district-wide rules, please?
Thank you. So the 5 metre rule, I find confusing because we have many playgrounds with roads, footpaths, walking areas, that are within 5 metres of the playgrounds. How do we handle that? Effectively, every dog owner that goes within those areas is breaching the 5 metre rule.
Yeah, it was a discussion that we've had. I think that's a change because currently it is prohibited on the sports surface or on the children's playground. We've got signs around that. We've looked at the practice of other councils in terms of having that buffer so that dogs are obviously under control and put run onto the playground. So in that area, there would be a lot of staff discretion. We wouldn't be able to show infringement if someone was walking the dog on within 5 metres of the playground along the footpath. But we may be taking issue if they're not allowed to help the dog run over the playground or around the perimeter of that playground. It certainly could take advice from Leslie, but if the 5 metre buffer is an issue, we could propose an alternative resolution which returns it back to current, which is that the prohibition is on the actual playground sports field.
As a dog owner and a dog walker and thinking of Brophy's Beach in particular, where you've got a hobbit path and a dog and a children's playground, you can't walk the hobbit path with your dog not being within 5 metres of the playground. So
The Esplanade is the same.
Yeah, and I'm personally not thrilled about this.
5 metres length. I might be getting it wrong, but this is the more liberal approach that starts proposing. It's not 5 metres because it's not on the ground at all.
No, it was more liberal before when it was not on playgrounds, but no restriction list, as long as your dog's under control and on lead. So this is more restrictive. I don't like it. So Martin and then,
Is Leslie into that?
oh, Leslie, sorry.
Sorry.
I was just referring you back to the comprehensive report, not wanting to confuse you. We have really, I mean, there's been quite a lot of discussion on this on the table. So our advice from our compliance staff is that we'll take a risk-based approach to enforcement. This is kind of like advice. But we have to enforce it and safety. Dogs defecating close to areas where sporting and kids are playing, and the health and safety issue. I just wanted to put that into the mix.
Thank you, Leslie.
Can I also just clarify the 5 metres of sports surfaces? Does that actually mean that if I'm there watching the grandkids playing cricket, for example, I can't bring the dog along because it's going to be within 5 metres of a playing field? And if that's the case, then there's a heck of a lot of people who are going to be impacted by the 5 metre rule.
It's the current rule, and yeah, it maybe needs a little bit more enforcement in the winter sports season.
So, Your Worship, we heard from the community boards when we came around that there were some issues with dog defecation on sports fields, and that was one of the reasons to strengthen that up. So yes, there will be a consequence of that in terms of watching the sports.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, just before we come to you, Martin. So I'm hearing that is an issue. I think it's something we need to address. Martin.
So being neither a dog owner or a person who goes along to a lot of sports things, I don't know how widespread it is for someone who's, got a couple of children that are playing a rugby or a cricket game or a soccer game to bring their dog along as well. I don't know if it's 5% of people, 95% of people. Personally, if it was me, I wouldn't bring my dog along if I was supervising my children playing sport. But I get around that whole thing because it's fine if you're, out in the wild somewhere and your dog poos, you scoop it up and that's fine. But if it's on a sports field or a playground where you've got little kids running around picking up the bark, all that kind of stuff, it's just a bit ick. So, I don't know how much of an issue it is on sports, people with their dogs and children on sports fields, but I think that within 5 metres makes sense from a health and safety and the point of view.
I kind of feel like, and I'm thinking of our lovely waterfront Esplanade playground that John's wandered down from Robinson Road with his dog. They've gone for a walk and the kids have said, Papa, can we go and play on the play equipment? Does he then have to stand 5 metres away? At the bottom of, I hear what you're saying about sports fields, but I also think of lifestyle. I think it's very important we don't inhibit the lifestyle that people have.
So your worship, again, as I said, just pulling you back to the submissions. So the specific 5 metre setback rule, that would help in consultation. 19 submitters supported the rule and 14 submitters opposed the rule. So it's split. You could, and equally staff have taken the more risk averse approach and said that we would deal with those issues that you've just raised through discretion in how we apply the rules. And obviously, if it's not practical, we're not going to actually infringements. However, we're comfortable if it is reverted back to just on children's playgrounds or on sports services, we would make that change and bring that somewhere. For you to be aware, you've got split in the community and staff moving away, so it's just
The problem that I have as a dog owner who's been in exactly this position is if you say staff will use a discretionary approach as a dog owner, when you are walking past the playground and you know that there's a 5 metre rule, you will be very conscious of the law and very uncomfortable about doing it. And dog owners, 99%, especially companion dog owners, are very compliant. And it really just colours your entire enjoyment of Esplanade. You can't do it. You don't have 5 metres. Brokey's Beach, you don't have 5 metres.
And there's
So,
also the fact that people are going to have a go at you
Yes,
as well. There's the potential, even if you've got the nicest dog in the world, that
Yeah.
someone's going to have a go at you
somebody
for
will have
being
to go.
close to a playground.
So my feeling is I would prefer to see it reverted back to not on the playground, but take out the 5 metre thing. That's my opinion. Reckon.
I would be supportive of the 19 submitters and have them off playgrounds and play parks.
So so what I'm hearing is that doesn't change. You still have a restriction on playgrounds and sports parks. It's just that 5 metre rule, which is almost impossible to comply with in some parts of the district. So that's one that covers with.
And that's pretty much the distance between the edge of the table that Len's on and the far end of the table, isn't it? That's pretty much 5 metres, I would think, along there. Just
So
for some perspective.
in the Esplanade, it means you're in the seat,
Mm.
and in Brophy's, it means you're on the road to be able to get past the playground. Yes. And that's very uncomfortable. And if you're not, somebody will, as Delhi said, somebody will have a go.
Could something like, accepting when the person is transiting, is moving?
I think that's a discussion we had as staff, that if somebody's moving through that area, they don't stop there with the dog, really.
Yeah, I mean,
Still made it like-
no stopping with dogs.
Oh. You see, it's like Brophy's Beach playground, and you see mum and dad and the kids, and they've walked down with their Labrador. Safety wise, they're standing right next to, there's that wooden frame around the playground with their dog on a leash while the kids are playing. So what are they going to go and sit 5 metres down the road away from their children?
Well, one of them could.
So I'm going to,
Yeah, it's a nanny state.
I'll make a proposal that be taken out.
I think if you had a dog and you had children and you wanted to go to a play park, you'd go to Brophy's, which is a dog-friendly, dog off-leash exercise beach. But if you didn't, or if you had a child that perhaps didn't like dogs, you would go maybe somewhere like the Esplanade, where that would be a bit of a space that's not available, for the dog. So you've got options. For me, I feel like you've got options. If you had children that were really adverse to dogs, you wouldn't take them to the Briefeast playground. Like, that just wouldn't be suitable because it's a no dog off lead exercise area.
But the dogs are not in the playground.
But they can run from the beach.
Unless they're on.
They
They
need to
be controlled by the playground, and it just means that mum and dad can stand this close to the playground while the kids are playing with the dog under control or on the lead. I just think that we're just so, we can stuff up people's lifestyles so easily by being
Absolutely.
too,
Not comfortable with it.
yeah, I'm not.
So I'd like to
comfortable
propose
with it
that
either.
be amended to take out the 5 metre and it goes back to the original no dogs on the sports field, no dogs on the playground, but take out the 5 metre restriction. That would be my proposal.
I would support that.
Yeah.
So, hold on, was that a show of hands?
Anyone here who owns a dog, a cat rather, is ineligible for voting.
So if you've got
Or a
two cats,
rabbit.
you're ineligible twice.
Right, so can we get a show of hands? This is informal, just a show of hands.
To take out
Take out-
5 meters.
Thank you. That's not a real thing.
I was just thinking about places like Whangapoa where the playground is right on the beach. And how far onto the beach 5 metres go? So if you weren't allowed within 5 metres, does that mean you're also not allowed to take your dog onto the beach?
Yes, it sounds like you support me.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you then.
That's a really good example.
Yeah.
Because that would mean you could not do the walk around the footpath and out of the place because you'd be within the 5 metres.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
Thank you.
Resolution.
So we will need to change.
Yeah,
that.
we need a resolution on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Is there anything else for district?
Okay, so subject to that change. I'm going to vote please on all those in favour of the district-wide subject to those changes. Those against? None? Okay, carried. Thank you. Okay, do we need to address this part here with the signs and things, or is that just information?
Yeah, it's just information. The other one we'll just raise, because it was heavily consulted on, was the removal of our winter holidays having restrictions. So at the top here, you'll see, right, it used to read from 20 December to 31 January all holiday weekends. And that included Queen's birthday and Matariki. We went out with consultation to remove those. We had enough information prior while going out that those, the winter holidays were an issue. And so that's why we're recommending no change, even though it is a change, the reason for saying no change is because that's what we went out with consultation on.
Yeah.
And that was submitted, but that is a fairly big change to the bylaw.
Positive one.
Yeah.
So,
Discussion on that.
so is it correct to say that the Easter and Anzac holiday weekends are in there because of a lot of people being around?
Yeah.
And not because of the breeding, because Doc said the dog breeding season's over by Easter, Anzac weekends, so that's purely for people.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason for that is administrative. So if you take Whangapoa Beach, south end of the beach is on the Labour weekend restriction, and the rest of the beach is on the summer restriction. And so what we would have happen is that in Easter, half the beach would become prohibited during the day, and the other half wouldn't, just because wildlife breeding had finished, and we want to have consistency because of that people element. So that was a tie up. So this just provides extra consistency, and it was generally agreed that the weekends the holiday weekends that were the issue were Queen's birthday and Matariki because of the daylight hours and the fact that it gets dark and people aren't on the beach.
Yeah.
Whereas people are can.
And submission wise, what was the feeling around the Easter and Anzac? Leslie, if you've got that.
9 supported the inclusion of Easter and Anzac. and 12 opposed. So again, like everything, the bylaw is pretty much split. Administratively, certainly support the inclusion of Easter and Anzac and the removal of King's birthday and once again from a communication perspective and making sure that people are aware of what our rules are on our entire beaches at certain times. So that's the kind of.
Okay. So that goes to the district line.
Yeah.
That we've just approved, so we don't need to make any changes to what we've just, so what you're giving us is just
Yeah.
clarification.
Clarification. Starting.
Okay, so we go into ward by ward. Rebecca, you want to do Mercury Bay first?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're on time.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So Mercury Bay, of course, covers RA, Lockwood Beach, Brisbane. So we'll move to Mercury Bay first. And it is a big area. Okay. I guess there's quite a lot of submittals on this Mercury Bay area.
So if we want to start with, the report sets out starting with Kuatunu.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And if we go down to the rules in here, but with Kuatunu, there were 9 submitters in support of the change, and 79 opposed. We want to
Yeah, the whole beach, isn't it?
Why are we starting at the finish?
So page 119.
I don't know if we're wrong from.
Sorry.
Just not-
Comprehensive. 119.
So we're just going to bring up a
Right.
PowerPoint that. So this is the area that we are talking about, and we just suggested change what we've been out with in the draft bylaw was that's that eastern end went into the wider restriction from Labour weekend to March rather than the more narrow 20 December, 31 January restriction.
Sorry, eastern end or north and south and northern and southern end?
No, it's definitely eastern because Kuatunu is facing north.
Yeah.
So that's the eastern end, that's the Luke's kitchen
Yeah.
end.
So that's the eastern end.
That's from which road? Is it from the middle of the picture?
Top of the screen is the eastern end.
Yeah. So it was proposed to change from Carfield Street, which most people didn't know existed, through to the end of Beach. And that's where a lot of people got upset because there's Carfield Drive further down.
Oh.
So it's Cathedral Drive and Cathedral Streets, and they thought half the beach was.
Well, I've lived in the bay for 40 years and I've never known a Carfield Street there, so.
No, it's there either.
It doesn't appear on maps.
Confused.
It's not, there's no road sign.
No.
So it's just on our map.
So how does Joe blogs folks
Yeah.
know about people?
And so, where it sort of says Beach Road and you come in, the map, that's sort of where the dotterels mainly are, up in that dune sort of area and next to the stream. That's where they nest. So in my humble opinion, that would be suitable.
So, yeah, so the decision before you is obviously we had quite a few submitters against the change. And I think most of those were accepting Leslie of keeping the current status quo,
Restrictions, yes.
restrictions, so they still expect to see a summertime restriction, just not the wider one. And currently, we would be using our temporary restrictions for non-residents in that area. So there's always the ability to use temporary restrictions. Doc submitted that there was enough wildlife in the area that wider.
For those sort of temporary to become permanent,
Yeah.
entrenched into the bylaw, and there's quite a substantive analysis of submissions in the report.
And your decision is, yeah, if you make that change or.
So can I just ask, there's a lot of submittals here, there's a lot of detail. Can I just ask what the staff recommendation is for this?
Is that we keep the restrictions as proposed, as we went out to consult on.
Yes, and the reason for that is, and having not spoken with the community like some of the local residents may have been, is that Meadow Street, obviously not getting the entire beaches project, like a lot of beaches have small areas that are doing wildlife protection. However, like the previous one, staff, this one is overwhelmingly opposed. Staff our recommendations, what's before you. They're not going to.
Many of those submissions were received very early in the consultation, so people went and they picked up, obviously they looked at the maps and they took the Cathedral Drive. So we put additional information out just to clarify where the restriction came from. Many of the submissions that we had were received really early in the piece before that additional clarification went out.
So if I may, both Meadow Street and moving eastward is the current, that's the current restrictions within the bylaw?
No.
No?
So the current bylaw has split the Kuatunu beaches into a number of different parts. So if, I guess the decision is whether we are looking to keep a short, the summer restrictions between 31 January or whether we go to the wider. We can work out alternative resolutions for whatever way you want to go. But there's obviously quite a lot of opposition in the community.
Can I drop down? So, oh, sorry, John.
We're just really picking up just to get absolute clarity. So at the moment, the restriction is just purely the December to end of January. And that's it. That's the only restriction. There's no restriction on areas. You can go all the way through.
Yes, we have employed temporary restrictions. Doc can request us that we make temporary restrictions
For that period of time though, through the end of January, the breeding
for the breeding season.
season.
This is the current one. So the current bylaw has Kuatunu Rings Beach. The entire beach is the 20 December to 31 January.
Yeah.
And Kuatunu Beach East and West, including Grays Beach, excluding the area 400 metres on each side of Quarry Point.
Boat club, boat ramp.
But right.
is so basically the Kuatunu beaches are all in that December to January period.
Right.
currently.
So currently, the understanding is that at any time of the year, you can go down to, is it Kingfisher Way or something where that sign is outside Grant and Judy Simpson's place? So it's that very popular car park before you get to the boat ramp. And people come down there with their dogs and go swimming, and they've got the understanding that that's a dog exercise beach at any time of the year.
Is that 400 metres either side of Quarry Point?
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah, so that I would say that there would be blood on the ground
So
if
that's
that changed.
the size area.
Yeah. So does that stay the same?
So we're
No.
not proposing to change that.
Sorry, I was out talking to him.
No, we're not proposing to change that.
Can I ask Emma if she's got any input to this? Emma?
Any comments?
Kia ora. Would just reiterate what the staff of so Brian and Leslie have been saying. We did receive a lot of submissions on this. There was a lot of concern within the community, but I guess the only point that I would reiterate from the deliberations report was this is only really formalising the temporary area restrictions which are put on this particular end of the beach year on year. So this is following our policy of having consistent and knowable dog control restrictions on beaches. It'll reduce the number of signs, it will reduce the, I guess, the inconsistencies, because at a certain point, I guess, when we talk about temporary area restrictions, they're not really that temporary if they're there every single season. And they're protecting a dotterel population, which granted has had a really rough time of it this year with the storm events. But we can only make changes on dog control in this subject matter. I'd love to be able to control the weather as well, but that would be my only point to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Reba. So just before we go to the questions, can I just get clarification? There was some confusion right at the early part when submitters were submitting on the basis of incorrect information, or that they thought Kawhero was the other one. What's happened to those submissions in the big picture? Have they been recontacted to actually you submitted on something that was incorrect information? Not incorrect, but they got the wrong street.
No, but what we did, we put quite a lot of comms up. We put it out on our Facebook page before the consultation period closed.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have just taken those submissions as they were written. It's hard for us to know why they submitted, whether in fact they disagreed with what is proposed, even if it runs from Kawhero Street. Right. We didn't go back to the submitters and say,
actually,
what was in your mind here?
Billy.
I have I think another thing that's potential to cause some angst is that we've got Kuatunu Beach east from Kawhero Street beach access, which we now understand is where it is.
Yeah.
And then we've got Kuatunu west from Kawhero Street beach access into the layperson. That looks like that's the whole beach taken out with prohibited at the Christmas time or prohibited. So where
It's the upland area. Just a minute, okay.
So where is that 400 metres either side of Quarry Point so that I can go back to my community and say, look, don't panic. You can still go down to the beach at Christmas time and have a swim with your dog.
Yeah.
Because that looks like you've just taken out my whole beach.
Which in Kuatunu is going to cause a problem.
It is.
Yeah, so if it was just east, you could still at least walk along and come down Kawhero Street and walk back towards the boat ramp. But if you say west as well, then you would say you'd have to stay on the road all the way till you got to the boat ramp. So that does take out. You're right.
So just while we check that, the first thing I would say is Emma raised a really good point, is that the temporary restrictions are there anyway all year round. Just putting those into the bylaw. So it wouldn't actually be too much of a change for the residents, other than they probably just have a reaction to seeing it changed, significantly in the text. It may be easier. So given that seems to be missed in the draft, that point, that maybe that we keep the status quo at Kuatunu, and we can bring back that alternate resolution.
Status quo meaning
What currently is
Everything
that currently is under the current bylaw right now, we keep in place, which would mean we rely on temporary restrictions for this area, and we keep that dog exercise area and that. Well, basically what the current rules are. Just got to read out.
Yeah, we revert back to the current.
Yeah, that's the current rules.
And with the other, with the understanding from elected members that it's likely that we'll have those temporary restrictions
Yes.
as requested.
So having been to the to residents ratepayers meeting. And John, you there?
It was fun.
We were there and it was pretty heated.
Mm.
So can I just ask both of you who were there, are we now lined up with what the community was anxious about?
I think so. I think I just want to doubly check that at any time of the year, at any time of the day, a person can go to 400 metres either side of Quarry Point and swim and exercise with their dog.
So that doesn't appear to be what we went out with consultation for. So it looks like for consultation, we went out and we applied the restrictions to the western part of the beach being,
From Carpenter Street.
Yep.
Yeah.
27th to so 31 January, and the eastern side from Labour weekend until 1 March. If, and we've heard from the community that that's not, that won't work for them. You've got balanced submissions, you've got 9 obviously supporting those changes. So the decision before you is whether you want to make changes that went out for consultation or not, and if not, direct staff to revert back to the current rules and we'll have to draft it.
Used to that. Yes.
Yeah.
So if we went, so their concerns
Yeah.
are real
So.
In terms of what's
Yeah.
drafted
Because that draft would take out the whole of Carpenter Street West.
down to, yes,
And I think the confusion is that as concerned with this Rings Beach, Greys Beach.
yes.
And I don't know if staff didn't really know what Quarry Point was, but having heard, what you've talked about, that's not going to be.
Greys Beach is a little bit like Brodie's off Buffalo, like it's just a sub beach, but Rings is its own beach in its own entirety.
Okay.
But
We'll take you on a tour, Ron.
Yeah.
I mean, hearing the fact that people might have been a little bit confused on what they were submitting on, I don't think that would outweigh the 9 people supporting it compared to the 79 opposing it. And we would have to have a really, really, really strong argument to overturn that, because that really would people to go, well, what's the bloody point, as Gary alluded to earlier. Yeah, so unless we feel that the confusion around what people were submitting on was great enough to overturn what people how people submitted, and I don't think we have that evidence, then I think it would be very difficult to put this in.
so what I'm hearing is that move back to what was and staff formalise that in whatever way you need to make it.
We'll make a schedule.
work.
Yep.
But, yeah.
All those in favour?
All those in favour?
Aye.
Councillor Connell, it might be really useful if you could actually maybe at a later date confirm to us where Quarry Point is, just.
Right there. It's that right one of the left.
That right?
That one there, you're not here.
Yeah.
So it's 400 metres east.
Grays Beach, yes.
Yeah, so it's 400 metres east side and,
Personally, I think 400 metres is too short. The actual distance is longer than that.
what one's Rings Beach, just
The
for.
one on the
It's also-
It's a totally new beach.
Because there seems to be an off-lead area at that beach, that isn't one, that's separate to the Quarry Point.
Right, yeah.
Can you just not be difficult? Sorry, I'd like to change my
Thank you, Rita.
section.
Terrific picture,
Okay, we are making progress. Now that we've got rid of some of the people we've got.
Your worship, what time is, next?
Can I just ask, please, before we go into this, amend schedule 1 to Aotearoa, why is that sitting in there? We missed something, or is that coming up?
That's.
It'll come up.
So we've jumped ahead.
Just for reconsideration.
Just on Wednesday today. What are we on? Otama.
Otama?
Page 125.
Thanks, Martin.
Staff recommendation, no change to proposed policy or proposed bylaw. Any discussion on Otama? No change? There being none, I'll put it. All those in favour? Or do you need more time?
Just trying to
Oh.
find it because it's in the middle of the sketch, in the middle of the table.
We just, so that, through the chair, like Doc had suggested it starting from 1st of October instead of Labour weekend. When is Labour week? Well, Labour weekend?
Third weekend.
The, okay, so that 2 weeks difference is not considered, staff didn't consider that significant?
It's not our recommendation.
Is it available to staff on a temporary basis if necessary?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a restriction.
Is that an answer?
Yeah, and we discussed it in the room.
Yeah.
We just have the ability to do that.
All right, so we have a yes vote in favour of that. Hotwood Beach. Okay. So the staff recommendation is no change to the proposed policy or proposed bylaw. I would like to suggest, before we get into discussion, or ask the question, you've got in the part above, you've got with the addition of the old campground reserve being a dog exercise area. But then in the recommendation, that's not actually spelled out. So should that be in the recommendation? So I'm looking at page 127. If you look at the recommendation in the box,
Yes.
you will see no change recommended, but then above that,
Yeah.
there's been discussion around the addition of the old campground.
That's always been not lead area.
That's always
In
been.
the current bylaw, it was our consultation to be the lead area. And so when we say no change, obviously we wouldn't recommend them to remove that. So that continues to be not lead area. And I don't think that's a question to submit this either.
So can I just give my 2 cents worth on this, because I attended the Hotwood Beach Ratepayers Association AGM a few months ago. And this was obviously a hot topic. It's held at Kim and Mark Becky's, was held at Kim and Mark Becky's house. There is some tension between the dog owners of the beach who want to walk their dogs, and between Ngāti A and the Surf Lifesaving Club, who have aligned with Ngāti A. So there is a bit of tension. I think from what I was reading, the Surf Lifesaving Club and Ngāti A would prefer to have more restrictions, if not total restrictions on the beach, but the dog owners want a balance, so they want continued access to the beach. What I'm reading is the staff recommendation seems to find the middle ground between that. And I'm reasonably comfortable with the staff recommendation in that it gives voice to both of those parties, but allows access. Because if that access is completely restricted, dog owners have nowhere to walk their dogs apart from that campground area, which is not always suitable, without getting in the car and driving significant distances to be able to walk their dogs. So.
But you'll notice that Hotwater Beach South, which is where the hot pools are and where most of the people are domiciled, they are prohibited from Labour weekend to March. So that actually doesn't answer what Mark Newton and Kim Morrissey et al. Wanted to happen. So it's actually got them prohibited even on leash. So what they wanted was to be able to walk from their house with the dog on the leash through that area to access the northern end of the beach. And at the moment, the problem is that they do have to get in their car and drive to the Domain car park or wherever it is specific time to access it.
Sorry, I'm obviously not from Hot Water Beach. So is there like a line that sort of delineates the south, Hot Water Beach south?
Little hot pools are just along a short way. Show where the hot pools are?
So it's the Domain Road car park.
Dale, can you point more?
And
So
it's around here.
Around there, yeah.
where's the domain car park? Is it
Yeah.
Salisbury?
Yeah.
So,
that's what separates north and south.
yeah.
Sorry, you're actually right in the way where you're pointing, sorry.
Sorry, this is where everyone lives.
Yeah.
So they're saying, why can't I walk through here with my dog on leash to access the area where I want to let my dog off leash?
And I agree with that. That should be a request on the walk past that area and then further on have an off lease area at some point, I don't know, figure out the point beyond.
Because at the
So
moment,
that
they've got
seems
to
to be
get
a
in the car.
fair consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got, if you look at the page 126, you've got 7 submitters down the bottom there, made the following suggestions, and I won't read it all out. And then 3 submitters noted support for the Hot Water Beach Ratepayers Association submission 282. From my discussions with those folks, those 7 and those 3 are the same people. So you add those together, you've got 10 submitters who are who would like to see those rules in place. So I guess if I can get some clarity from staff, the 7 and the 3, the 10 submitters, what is being proposed, does it line up with what they want?
Currently it's status quo. What the rules currently are, we now, the draft bylaw consultation kept those same rules in place. The 10 submitters would be wanting to make the changes that Councillor Walker talked about. Staff have, we have worked on a potential alternative resolution for you. The issue that we see is that if, given the popularity of Hot Water Beach, and it is a very different beach, in that even at 6 o'clock at night, if it's low tide in summer, there will be a lot of people at that beach. And even if dogs are on lead, we didn't necessarily want them hanging around in and around hot pools, which is, I guess, some of the issue that the surf club see or what we see. We looked at a potential site-specific rule that kept it prohibited with the exception dogs on leash travelling through this area without lingering for the purpose of accessing the Northern Beach.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
That kind of.
it will be hard to enforce, but that would be even more of a middle ground, I guess, to say that, yes, if we turned up and there's a dog on lead hanging around the hot pools because their family had come to visit, they would be infringed because it's prohibited at that time. But if the residents bring their dog on lead to walk, and we saw them walking all the way up to the beach, it is outside of what we normally do. That's something, I guess, alternative for you to consider.
I like the sound of it.
I like the sound of that, and it's actually putting a bit more common sense back onto the dog owner, and for God's sake, ping the idiot that allowed people who live there access to their beach. There's just been some very, very strong lobbying from surf, which has created quite a lot of angst in that community.
Martin and Terry.
So, yeah, on page 127, about the 3rd paragraph down, it says, staff advised that Hot Water Beach is part of treaty settlement with co-governance between Ngāti Hei and the council. So that is co-governance that is yet to be arranged. So bearing that in mind, and while I support the idea of people being able to transit along there because of issues with having to get in the car and drive, would that suggestion that we were talking about before on leash, would that be acceptable to Ngāti Hei?
So it's a good question. So I guess the question is, does co-governance, if and when it goes through as part of the treaty settlement, does it trump council bylaws?
Well, I think it would be, it would be a sitting down, talking about it thing. Well, that's how it should be done.
I'd like to go with that amended proposal today.
Mm.
See how it flies, and when Ngāti Hey, you know, if people are all over the place biting people in the bum while they're having a hot swim, then
It'd be
we go
dogs.
with, well, it'll be dogs, you know, not people. Dogs.
Other places.
Yeah, I'd like to give it a shot, and then if Ngāti Hey comes to the table when they've got the mandate to do that,
Yeah, that can be discussed.
that can be discussed at that time.
I'm comfortable with that. John, you've got some thoughts on that?
I'm comfortable. I think it's a good compromise with the situation. I absolutely believe we should facilitate an ability to be able to take your dog for a walk. Yeah, and not have to hop in your car and drive to a place to be able to do that. So
Thank you.
it has my support.
Andy, I just want to add to it also that the locals there's not many locals in town, and they do want to walk their dogs, and the beach has been sort of overtaken with tourism. So I think this is a small thing we can do for them, but give them that opportunity just to walk through the group and then use their dog. So I support it 100%. Not too sure how the wording goes. It's a bit complicated. We're happy with it. It's a bit wordy. You could say no dogs on lead or dog prohibited in this area unless
Unless walking
moving through the area.
to access the northern end.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have got a couple of alternatives. We'll bring that back to you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Thank you.
Sorry, we've known that before. We've got to be throwing that in all over the place. Okay, comfortable with that?
Yeah.
All those in favour, subject to that revised wording? Thank you. Fabulous, well done.
Buffalo Beach.
Rock and roll. Buffalo Beach and Tapatapuatia. Recommendation is no changes. Refer operational managers, including compliance and enforcement compliance team for consideration. Can we get some explanation on that, please?
Emma, would you like to lead this discussion? Not there.
Who's leading? Emma?
Kia ora. Sorry, this was finding my mute button. So the submissions to Buffalo Beach and Tapatapuatia were interested in including the area and the sand behind the sand and the restrictions due to the nesting dotterels, and also one other submitter wanted that wide beach reserve area adjacent to Buffalo Beach be included as an off-lead exercise area, and made some other suggestions there. So with regards to the reserve area there, so we haven't done investigation as to the feasibility of this, but staff did note that being right next to a busy road, it wouldn't be the first point of call for us to use as an exercise area, just due to the health and safety issues there. And also we've got with relation to the submission around the vegetation behind the sand, that's subject to the district-wide restriction of requiring dogs to be on lead at all times. So there's already some protection there for nesting birds in that area, but as always we work closely with DOC in collaboration with DOC, and if there was specific nesting birds in that area that needed a total prohibition, those specific temporary area rules would apply.
Emma, is there any specific reference to Ngāti Hey and the fact that Tapatapuatia is a similar area? Wahitapu?
So we hadn't specifically received any submissions to that, and I believe when the rules, because obviously there was no changes recommended to this rule, so it's just the existing bylaw restrictions. My understanding is that there are existing restrictions, and the bylaw that was developed in 2016 did undergo some consultation with Ngāti Hey, as well as Ngāti Hey being involved in the pre-consultation of this bylaw. So no issues were raised as to the current restrictions.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, so if everyone's happy with that, all those in favour?
Aye.
Hey.
Okay.
recommendation is very similar to Buffalo Beach. No changes and refer operational matters to council's compliance team. Any discussion?
Can I just again please clarify that no change means this is exactly the same as the previous bylaw?
It does, but in this case, I think
It does, yes.
yeah, so in this case, the rules are going to stay.
Stay as they are.
No change.
And very small number of submitters, so it looks like, apart from a request from three, the dog requested dogs to nominate at all times. The staff feel confident that the current rules in place are sufficient to manage the situation. Okay, all those in favour? Thank you.
The remainder were lumped together.
So we'll start with Robinson Road Reserve. John, that's your pack. Any thoughts?
No, I think if I understand it correctly, it's no change from the existing as being recommended, so.
So we're looking at all the other locations which cover a fairly diverse range. You've got from Robinson Road to Mark Powell Bay, Opilo Sands, Brooks Beach, O'Farrell Point, Cathedral Cove, Markarani, Kutuni Sports Domain, and very small number of submitters. I'm just looking for anything that leaps out. Has anyone got anything that leaps out that they would like to discuss in more detail?
Like a curtain sports domain thing doesn't have it 5 metres and that would obviously come out.
I think that's a district-wide.
It's like a district-wide thing, so it's fine, yeah.
Martin, you have a question?
So with Cook's Beach, oh, sorry, we're on a particular one, or we can just go to the check.
So this is, Cook's Beach is included in the balance of Mercury Bay area, which we're discussing now. So
Okay.
yes.
So Doc had suggested, I'm not going to read out all your suggestion, but is our analysis in keeping with what Doc had submitted on?
What they wanted is that dogs be on leash from 1 October to 1 March.
Which is a little bit different from our,
Yeah. So the current rule is 20 December to 31 January and over the weekends.
But with the ability to use temporary restrictions at any particular part of the district.
so like if, for instance, Doc identified some breeding birds there, then potentially that they could be protected under a temporary.
Yes.
So that happens every year. They send a list. That's quite a extensive list to Alice. Alice has adding sign temporary restrictions, and then Doc place the signs.
We place the signs at the beach entrances and we also provide them for to use on the beach.
But they place the ones on the beach. So they mark up the list, they put up a temporary restriction.
Right, okay, so that wouldn't, so that potentially would keep Doc happy around.
We
Then I can't say that they'd be.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I mean, sorry, it would fit with their,
That's without policy.
Yeah.
Of finding the balance between protecting wildlife and getting access to the beach.
It's that
Yeah.
balance that we're trying to achieve here.
So most of Doc's submission, as you said, as it's pulled through, would want more restrictions in a lot of places.
Yeah.
We're trying to find the balance using it. Where that's appropriate, we've recommended that. Otherwise, we will refer to our temporary restrictions to manage wildlife.
and that also, I guess, has the local saying, oh, okay, that makes sense, there's a restriction there now because we can see some birds there.
Not in Kuritu's.
No, we're talking about Cook's Beach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So that's the tension that's played out, obviously, is that where we have gone to make the change to something more restrictive.
Yeah.
In the locals. That's quite a big concept.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll go with the staff recommendation, which is no changes. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Right, so we're on to
What more
Go
would
back to
you?
Coromandel Culver where we started.
Back to Coromandel.
Yeah, no problems.
We're doing going back.
We're going to Coromandel Culver.
Yeah.
God, I think it's your
Okay,
page.
we are.
Okay.
On to
Page 116.
Yeah.
So what page is it?
Okay,
116.
116.
there is a proposed change that dogs are allowed off leash, but under control in the War Memorial Forest.
Yeah, and there's a big background that one, Len. There it is, and that was identified as a spot where dog walkers could go and public would be put in danger with being off the lead because it's just solely for that purpose. It's worked out well for me. I see Tyra looking for a place for one of those memorial forests. It's a damn good place for dogs because you go and get your dogs for police and let them run. So yeah.
Is that possible under the proposed policy and bylaw? Can I just clarify that? For the dogs to be able to be off leash in the Memorial Forest area?
Yeah, so it's identified through works with the community and staff, local staff. It was identified as a new area for a dog exercise area.
Okay.
It's been operating de facto that way for some time. This bylaw is just going to formalise that.
Okay.
And again, as you can see, there was very few, there were only 9 submissions. 3 were in favour and 2 were neutral. 1 was opposed, and then the others really weren't as relevant to that.
It's got a good strong support up there. There are plans to expand the area even more to make it more dog friendly.
One submitted, do you have any restrictions on dog owners as a punishment? Okay. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you.
And there's 2 Diabo walkways.
So this is a change as well from current.
Yeah.
It's just a change to clarify. One submission, we had a submission saying that I wasn't quite sure what we meant, but it was putting in the words and having walkway with the beach, the entire beach, including the walkway.
Yeah, it's quite a sensitive area. Yep.
Okay, so recommendation from staff, as noted, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. And submissions on other locations in the Coromandel area. I take this as read. Staff recommendation, no changes. This is on page 118. On your packet. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Right, what have we missed?
Then we go to 133, Araparanui.
Yeah, oh, I know.
133. Okay, any discussion on this?
I've got a couple of points to raise, but do you want to, I think they slip right on the first one, I suppose. Is this a request from the owners of the island or is it a request from us on just the southeast bay?
Sorry, who owns the island? Is it DOC or is it?
No, it's
private?
private. There are council
Facilities.
reserves, and that's what we're.
Only talking to the council reserves.
That's all this
Yeah.
one will apply to.
Nice to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is the southeast bay a reserve or not? Because that's where most of the boats and people come into it.
Kia ora, I can answer that question, team. So the bylaw will apply to public places, so that's beaches as well as council reserves, and the proposal is to prohibit dogs from the entirety of the island.
At all times, you know.
At all times, so yeah, straight prohibition. And that's
Council decision or was that from the owners of the island?
I'm
This is my
not.
proposal.
What's that?
Council decision.
So it's council's proposal. I think it's definitely supported by the owners. They submitted and strong support of the prohibition. From a council perspective, obviously enforcement is very difficult out there. Much easier to just say no dogs, full stop, rather than saying dogs can be, dates and times, that kind of thing.
They used to be on leave, but they're saying no dogs now. It doesn't say that.
There is history that I think residents of the island approached the community board and had been working island.
Yeah.
And that's what
That started this off.
Yeah, and generated our proposed change on being prohibited. And as you can see, the submissions are split, so 5,
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
against.
Well, the owners of the island would have to have a lot of influence, so if we think they don't want it, well, that's.
So I'm guessing the residents don't have dogs.
Don't want, yeah, they do, they've got farms out there, yeah, it's really good dogs.
So the dogs
The working dogs are different.
But on their property is okay, but not.
Yeah, violence and violence.
I think a lot of those islands are heading towards that reserve sort of status anyway. They're trying to encourage the wildlife and good on them. I've got no problem.
So there was on the 6 submitters, but it says one stated many property owners were also dog owners, but presumably that's working dogs. Rather
No, there's not, there's properties out there, batches that are privately owned, so they could take their dogs there.
So this would stop them from doing that.
I wouldn't have thought so, but I don't know.
It will stop them taking them to reserves that we own.
On the beach.
They can
Right.
still have them on their properties, they just can't take.
These properties are on the beach, on the southeast bay, there's about 5 or 6 properties that border the bay.
So would we end up then with a situation that the dog couldn't get from the boat
To the beach.
back across the beach? I mean, I'm not being silly, but.
It becomes a compliance issue and still it's going to be some conflict.
We're not going there, so right.
So how will this be, it'll just be a sign on the beach, do not have dogs on the beach?
Or the wolf.
I think it will work on, yeah, that's what islands work with. It will be education before people go to the island, but certainly it will be something.
And the community police will be out there, as Delhi said.
So do you think this is?
I'll police themselves. We'll let them police themselves.
Okay.
We have a bit of both.
Well, I just, yeah,
It's pretty obvious when you turn up on a beach with a dog on your boat. I think, as opposed to someone who's.
well, the property people have boats too, they bring their dogs and they let them run around the beach and go home, so it's a kind of a, what are they doing and what are we gonna do, so.
Difference is you own the island.
I know, the island owned by some other people down the road, these are just sections.
Well, they own the island, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a little confused.
Losing well.
I'm not sure that we need to spend time or energy fixing their island properties.
Okay. All right. So we go to the next one, Otara Bay.
Hang on. So all in favour of the proposal from the staff?
Right,
Yeah.
Yep, no change? Yep, thank you. All right, Otara Bay.
So Otara Bay and Cara Sailor's Grave are sort of connected. Have you got a picture of them?
So, yes,
they,
Tara Bay is the northern one and Sailors is what comes down south.
Yeah. So you're saying at Sailor's Grave, they can have dogs on leave, but you can't have it on Otara Bay, Otara Bay, is that right?
Yes, so we propose that dogs are prohibited at all dates and times at Otara Bay.
Yeah.
And that's so on the beach, they're already prohibited. What we're doing, changing in this iteration is just prohibiting from the access way, and that was mostly just to because there's no point having a dog on the access way if they're then prohibited from the beach. So it's just protecting that area, accessing the beach where they'd be on lead at all dates and times as per the district-wide rule.
Yeah, I get that, I have no trouble, but when you go to Cara Bay, next door, you're saying that dogs are okay on, maybe off leash, but must be under control.
So these
Yeah, so that's the status quo, yes.
But with Tikara Bay is where the Kiwi sanctuary is. Backs into that hill there. But I don't quite follow how this is going to.
It's the status quo for both, isn't it?
it is, yeah.
So there's no change to what it was before.
Yeah, I know, but it's, you hear the discussions that come out of the submitters here. There's some areas there that I am confused by this because Sailor's Grave butts into the hill where the Kiwis are.
Yeah, we didn't get any submissions on that. What was Doc's? Emma, do we know what Doc's position on Takado was?
So Te Karo, I'm just looking, I don't think they specifically submitted on Te Karo, but there is that tension that you'll see coming through from the submissions about the lack of off-lead areas in this area, coupled with this being a very, very busy beach used frequently by families. We heard from the submitters in the hearing on this as well. And so that's why one of the reasons we are suggesting to leave status quo, but also actively working with the community on finding an alternative off-lead area before removing this, just to ensure that we are maintaining that balance for this community.
Thank you, and I think that's clear and clear coming through the submissions that they do want some facility to walk their dogs. There is quite a strong local presence that don't want them, and that's the people living in the bush there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that use this beach that do use it because it's sort of a off the beach. It's not really a main beach. It's kind of a excluded
And
area.
there is the ability to use our temporary restrictions if needed.
Yeah, we would take.
Find it becomes an issue.
Wildlife
Right.
matters and Doc haven't raised.
No.
I've heard that there is not a lot of places where you can walk dogs.
Yeah.
Or have dogs close to Tairua anyway, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, well,
take that away and
Yeah.
that were a
Yeah.
problem.
Real problem.
Yeah, and you can see our recommendation that we're going to work with our community management team and parks and facilities to see whether there is somewhere that we can find in the community.
There's a little reserves group set up there too that maybe help, maybe discuss it with them or something.
Okay.
But not all one way or not, I don't know. Okay.
As far as alluding to before, Leslie, have they not got one of those memorial parks over there in that community?
Not that we have heard of, no.
They do, but it's at the RSA cemetery. So I would hazard a guess that they probably wouldn't support a dog exercise area.
Not appropriate.
Good call. Yeah.
Okay, look into that, that's good.
So, favour of that, thank you.
Yep.
The staff recommendations,
Yeah.
and I like the idea of the Parks and Facilities team investigating options.
Yeah.
Where are we up to?
Hootaka.
6.5 in some other locations in the TP area.
Right.
I think it's just,
Oh, sorry. That's
what page are we on the package?
35.
135. Hootaka Road Beach, Tairua.
Yeah.
Another highly sensitive area.
Terry, is that walking access only, that one? Walk into that one?
Which one? One before?
Hootaka Beach, Hootaka Road.
Yeah.
Over to Otama Beach. Is it Otama? I can't remember. Otara?
Otara.
Otara Beach, yeah.
Okay.
You walk over there.
So is that off Pumpkin Hill?
Yeah, Pumpkin will go down the hill, down the bottom.
Yeah,
You got Sailor's Grave and Otara.
thank you.
So we received one submitter, and that's why it's listed. We requested prohibited. We didn't, because of wildlife reasons, we didn't have Doc submit, say that there was presence of dogs or oyster catchers in particular that need to be protected, and so it just said status quo. But again, it's on top of them to provide us that information. If there is an issue, we could put a temporary restriction.
Did they have to go through Otara to get to this one, and they're restricted in Otara?
Yeah.
So it's
Potentially-
moot
potentially
point,
not.
really, isn't it?
Yeah. potentially.
So no changes? All in favour?
Hootaka.
Applications, Tairua, Kawanui.
We on 135, Hootaka, right?
3-6, I think.
This one here.
Oh, we've done it.
3-6 there.
136. So what are we on now?
136, so other locations in the Tairua Kawanui community.
Just there's nothing to raise staff recommended changes. That's just whether there's anything.
There's the Tairua Surf Beach. What's that?
That's just that's the general
Also, Tara is.
Tara Ocean Beach?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's the normal 20 December to 31 January rule.
right, I'm approving of it. Yep, I'm happy, that's what it was.
No changes, all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you.
10.
Thames, page 137 in the packet. Now, this is very important stuff, the Harrington Rail Trail. Town walk the dog on the Harrington Rail Trail.
People do.
Dogs are prohibited at all dates and times.
That's a change.
Can I ask a question about this?
Clear a conflict of interest here.
Yes, you may ask the question, yes.
So within the staff, within the staff analysis and recommendation, it says, rail trail north of Kopu Bridge is outside of the council's jurisdiction.
It's a paragraph.
Yeah.
North of Kopu Bridge.
South Coast.
Yeah, but us.
And in fact, TCDC goes as far as Hikataya.
Should it say south?
Well, north is over the bridge, isn't it? That's north.
We're north of the bridge right now.
Yeah.
It says south of Coburg Bridge to Ferry.
Over the bridge is heading west.
Is it?
South of the bridge and down to Hikataya is TCDC.
That's easy.
Not in there, it said something in there about district.
This says the rail trail north of Kopu Bridge is outside of council's jurisdiction. Is that because it's railway corridor?
Emma, do you want to just talk to that? Is that an error?
Emma, can you clarify, please?
I'm trying desperately to remember whether that's a typo or whether we did investigate that was the rail corridor. To be honest, the Hauraki Rail Trail rules are a bit tricky because of the different arrangements that were put in place when, for allowing people to go through and adjacent to farmland. And I think that was the reason that was proposed to be prohibited, because the Hauraki Rail Trail entity that looks after that area, their preference is for dogs to be prohibited because of their this being so close to the livestock. But yeah, I apologize. I think that is an error. That sentence.
Clarify, my recollection is that the rail trail is actually sitting on the Kiwi Railroad designation.
Yes.
Technically, it isn't council's land,
Because I think we
privately owned, it's on my Kiwi.
I think it's gone back to Iwi, isn't it?
We had a discussion about that when we were talking about the sculptures to go on the
Yes.
rail trail, and that there was a mixture of land ownership.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a mixture of land ownership, and that I think that there must be some rail corridor.
It just,
Rail.
but the rail trail north of the corporate bridge just sit right on the designation.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I can walk the dog. And Brian can't do anything now.
So does this mean we don't even need to be discussing this because it's not our land, not our jurisdiction?
No, I think we manage it, don't we?
The DCA allows council
Hauraki Trail
rules
is
on.
DCO to us.
Okay.
Sorry, can you just get Emma to clarify that? Emma?
I was just saying that the definition of public place allows for council to put rules on anywhere that the public are able to access. Obviously, with the exception of DOC, who can apply their own rules under their enabling legislation. But it was an area where previously council didn't want to apply rules because there was an existing arrangement in place, and I believe that this is a rule that will provide clarity to users on that area, and is also consistent with our policy in allowing for health and safety of the people using that area.
So I should say it doesn't belong to council, it's outside of council's ownership, but we are able to
Make the rules.
manage dogs there because it is a public place.
So on the bit of the rail trail between Totara and Karonga Bridge, that's actually footpath.
So that will be on me, unless we're specifically, so the current rules would be the general district-wide on-lead rule. We're specifying the Hauraki Rail Trail, so whatever would be deemed to be the Hauraki Rail Trail would become prohibited from a dog perspective. So I've just heard Emma, you mentioned that the committee made this request. The trust, sorry.
I believe so. This is my recollecting back to the 2016 discussion about the entity that was organising, and I believe that their preference was to manage dogs through signage that they put up, since it was their kind of area. But yeah, I would need to check back on the pre-consultation work that was done for this most recent bylaw, since I wasn't involved in that part.
So would it be helpful if we broke the Hauraki Rail Trail into north and south of the Kopu Bridge and north of the Kopu Bridge, and dealt with those separately? Because south, I can see that people are going through rural, there's stock. I can see the issues around dogs there, but between north of the Kopu Bridge to the edge of Thames, there's people constantly, and the mayor knows, people constantly walking dogs along there. There's no way I could vote for a thing saying no dogs walking there.
Does that cross over into footpath area?
It does.
So that's where I'm confused. Is it rail trail? Is it footpath? Is it both?
I think just opposite the Totowa shops, Oliver's there. The rail trail sort of joins into the footpath.
So the proposal would remain an on-lead area as per the district-wide rule. It's just south of Kopu Bridge where it would swap to prohibited, and I believe that's because the farmland that it starts going through at that point.
Oh, we're right. So up to there, we're on lead. That's good. Fix that up.
Cool.
Just specifically on the Hauraki Rail Trail, I have no problem with the north of Kopu Bridge up to Thames on lead dogs, because it crosses over the proposed in and out anyway, so I'm okay with that.
We spoke the other day, and there's 3 dogs, and went there at our computer, but it was a dog on them,
So just what we'll bring back to you then is, as Emma's touched on, we don't need to specify, it will just be by default on the north anyway.
Yeah.
So what we will do is we'll just specify Hauraki Rail Trail south of Kopu Bridge.
Bridges. Make the change to the schedule.
Which is the area from Kopu Bridge down to Hikatai. Okay, so do we need to acknowledge any changes to that, or can we just move past that? And
yeah, we'll bring those back to you.
We'll bring those back with a resolution so that we can lock it in place, and then you can adopt the bylaw with the change in it.
So that's on. So it's on 7.1 for the whole lot.
No,
7.1.
Joanne Drummond's come back and said, yeah, no dogs on the farmland, otherwise the farmland is fine. So.
So can we talk about 7.2?
Yeah, Burke Street.
So just for clarity, is that including the dog park, well, the park that's now known as the dog park area? Yes.
So there were no changes proposed to Burke Street Beach or Burke Street Reserve. These are just submissions to this area.
So, and I realise you can't see because I'm pointing at the screen. So it's Burke Street Beach and this is the reserve?
Yep.
Yes.
So the current, what are the current rules there, please, Brian?
Through the chair, so the reserve is off leash. And so that's the dog park area that everyone goes, and the beach area is on leash, and there's been no changes to it.
Cool.
So there's a community group out there that is trying to establish Burke Street dog exercise area as a dedicated exercise area with, I think, fencing and, you know, like an enclosed off-leash exercise area, which I'm very keen to support. Is there anything that we can do to support that community activity?
So it's currently an exercise area.
It is, but I'm talking about the community efforts to get it fenced.
Yeah, so it's separate to the bylaw, we can definitely raise it in community. facilities team.
Okay,
But you'd just be wanting to make sure that your underlying rule in the bylaw will enable it, which it does in this case.
which it does.
So that's just the structure that we need to go into. It's enough.
All right, thank you.
Through the chair, before we move on, Emma's not gone back because I don't have it on my screen to the schedule relating to Haraki Rail Trail. The schedule actually does say south.
South of Coker Bridge to
Yeah.
Ferry Road to Guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so we actually had it right.
We had it right. Yeah, it's just the way it was worded.
So we won't bring any change.
We won't bring a change of that way. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Thanks. Okay, Kuranui Beach. I'm not sure what the current rule is, but it looks like district rules.
Prohibited from 20 December to 31 January and holiday weekends. So dogs are allowed off leash at all other dates and times.
Any discussion around Kuranui Beach? There being none, all those in favour of recommendation, no changes? Aye. Thank you. Fulton Bay. Current rule, and again, looks like district rules. So any discussion around Fulton Bay? None, all those in favour? Aye. Other locations in Thames Community Board area with not specified. Why does it come down, start talking about Burke Street again?
Just as I think we've raised what you talked about, so there's submissions requesting more off-lead areas. And Burke Street Reserve is an off-lead area. Often people want to use Downing Field, it's a sports field, so it's captured by the prohibition, so it's not, what we're touching is not an appropriate location. To be an exercise there.
As is the race course. Who owns the race course? Is that privately owned?
Jockey Club.
Jockey Club.
I think they lease it off us.
Is it being used or is it just empty?
They grow grass on it.
That's another discussion, isn't it? But it's flood prone, isn't it? Would be.
Does.
So let's not have that discussion now. Richmond Villas pedestrian area, is there a walkway behind Richmond Villas?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Okay, so any discussion around the other parts of that, currently available?
I just want the one submitted requested dogs be prohibited from Holland Street, particularly on Saturday market. So at the moment, dogs on lead are allowed in the CBD. And it's at the discretion of shop owners. That's slightly different. They're at the discretion of shop owners if the dog's allowed in the shop. Roughly. Sorry, that's just complicated. I'll drop that question. Carry on.
There'll be enough, we can talk about that, but actually, I
don't care.
Yeah.
Unknown.
We do that.
Okay, so no changes recommended. Everyone happy with that? All in favour? Matar, this is where the trouble starts. Councillor Walker.
Yes, and yes, all good. Pick them off.
Right. Any discussion? Staff recommendation is no changes.
I think it works well at Only Mane, so I'm happy with that.
Any further discussion? Okay. Why are we looking at all those?
This is to show you how many beach accesses.
And
we
fun with that.
Yeah, so one question once.
Yeah.
Look what you did.
Yeah, and just to point out that it's Whangata, because that's a bit of an example, is that restriction changes halfway through the beach, and it changes at
18.
That's 18.
Yeah.
0 to 18 is your normal summer rules in the spit on the southern end by the estuary. That's wildlife area, so that is the wider Labour weekend rules, and it works.
It works.
Yeah.
So we're happy.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But we're just with these new relaxations during the winter. I think that's the key that's going to happen. So that's the only change in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that formalised in what we're proposing here? If
Sorry?
it works, is that formalised in what we're proposing?
Yeah.
Martha?
So I just note one of the submitters had said that dog caused the death of only 2 chicks. this season.
That's right.
Is that doctorals?
Yeah,
Under the summary submission, the third submission down, 1262.
Tide took a few through the two cyclones as well. And I'm sure that Branston's going to have a egg feast every now and again as well. We do a bit of trapping down here to try and control that.
Oh, good. Okay, all those in favour? Aye. General submissions unrelated to the policy of policy. Sorry.
Couple more.
Right, Mr. What am I missing?
Page
Partiki and
143.
a poultry.
That one.
Yes, so parts of just going to,
Too many bits of paper.
Emma, do you want to talk to the chair or is it the change?
So, yes, thank you. So Pataki, we've got a restricted, or sorry, we've got a off-lead area in Pataki Reserve. We've received one submission to this area, just with a bit of a background and requesting some clarification as to the area that this off-lead area is exactly at. And so this gave us a really good opportunity to look at the wording in the policy and the bylaw to make sure that we were being really clear with council's intent. Obviously, we've got signs down which identify the area, but just to make it really, really clear, we're recommending some changes just to essentially capture the area which is identified in the map within your comprehensive report, to just be that pointy end of Pataki Reserve, because obviously Pataki Reserve includes the esplanade that goes almost the whole way into town, and that definitely was not the intention of the existing bylaw.
Yeah, it's good clarification. It's good. And putting Everett Drive into it makes sense. A crescent makes sense.
So it's essentially, this is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
When it's the current bylaw talks about joining reserves, and it could be conceived that it's, you know, all the way around. That wasn't the intention. We've gone back to look at the 2016. So it's just wording change. Basically, it's at the end of Thorne Drive.
Yeah.
That area is the dog exercise area.
Don't step back, Brian.
Very good. And I think we're happy with what's going on there. So it's all good.
Nice.
Okay.
And then also it's
Poetry's sensitive.
yeah.
It's a world of its own.
It is essentially there was a compromise in 2016 with DOC because of the wildlife protections on the beach, that the forest area would become the exercise area.
Yeah.
The issue is that since then those trees have been poisoned, they're falling, and so DOC have actually closed a lot of that area anyway to the public, and so we thought it's not wise to encourage it to be an off-lead.
What's
Yeah, we
the
went there.
campground policy on dogs?
That will be private, so it will become it's a public place, and that the public can go and access it, so dogs should be on lead. But their decision to whether they allow dogs or not will be.
I thought it was the campground was all restricted, no dogs.
No, there's dogs.
I could be wrong,
That may be, that they can make the choice themselves. Yeah.
so they can.
So on the beach, it's the doctoral is quite a particular area down by the point, but as you move up the beach, it opens up for dogs. Is it on leads or is it?
No.
I can't remember exactly how far the leads that kicks in.
So there's a Quarry Beach, entire beach excluding southern end is on leash all year round. And south, which is the sand spit, is Highway Street, is prohibited all year.
Does that go right up to Hoya, right to the end? Poultry Beach goes right up.
It's this entire beach, so I guess anywhere that you can walk
Yeah.
to a point, it's going to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're just going to run the docs here. Are we just rock with their rules?
No, we were recommending no change, so basically, Quarry Beach be on leash,
Right.
and then prohibited in the southern end,
17.
which has always been. The only change that we're making is that, as I touched on, the forest area was was an off-lead exercise area,
Yeah.
and that's now in the yeah. I don't know if we're not recommending it be prohibited. We're just removing it It's not moving it, not moving it.
So they'll use it as a transit place to walk
Correct,
between.
they can still walk through on lead, but we just didn't want to encourage people to be running around and crosses on it.
Off leash with poison trees and
Yeah.
things doing.
Still haven't found that guy. Anyway. Okay, I'm happy.
So the recommendation is no change. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's it.
No, there's a wider, other locations as one would kind of multi-board area.
There
That is,
So we're up to here, and what we can do is look at pretty quickly.
And this one, changes to do this.
Is it binding or the same? Yes, you do. So I think it's one. Leslie?
Just before we move away from, move over to the bylaw, we have a few submissions on other locations in Parliamentary Community Boards. Everybody happy with, the proposals that we don't make any changes for,
Terry?
Sorry, Leslie, what are you? referring to?
page 145?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so it's not finished on the town.
So there were some submissions for other locations other than the main ones that we've raised here.
Oh, right.
One was looking for a prohibited area to be extended to include the whole of the Otago River mouth.
Yeah, they're really nice.
And we,
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got no problem there because they're restricted on the point back to, is it 2024, 24? Up to the Tikuku landing?
No, I don't think it goes that far, it's 18 to 20.
20,
It's just a corner,
just the corner.
it's on.
But on lead, but either one up to there, it's off lead. No, it's on lead but uncontrolled.
18 to 20, which is the.
Yeah.
Prohibited.
Yeah,
It's that, yeah, that wider, summer restriction. And then, yeah, from 20 around to 24,
it's,
yeah, so,
so what we're saying is further south or going that way, there's some land that they're looking to have, is it off lead, isn't it?
but the request that's prohibited is extended down there, so they're saying that it shouldn't go to 18 to 20, it should go to from 18 to 24.
Oh, no.
It should go further down.
No. There's actually no off-lead area there, so having a dog on lead is pretty important. I wouldn't extend it down that zone.
Or dogs and.
So Dot didn't propose that we extend that.
Right.
There is actually a bit of off leash as well in year round.
Yeah. Further down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, that is reasonably close, but Dot didn't just sort of.
Okay.
From you take the lead from there.
Okay. Okay.
So no changes, you want to recommend?
Looks like we have no change. I don't think we should bring that prohibited back any further. No, it takes us quite a lot of the points for both sides, yeah. You happy with that, Brian?
So, sorry, question. Do the bits, because I know that there's some land there that's culturally sensitive around, 18, 19, 20. Does the dog control overlap with that area and is that appropriate?
Prohibited area, there's Europar there, I was like, yeah.
That's why I'm asking, yeah.
That is restricted.
Yeah, so that, and so there's overlap to protect the
The
Europar?
bones are hanging out the side of the thing, yeah.
No, so that would just be a reserve that's on lead, and I don't believe we got submission from anyone
Oh, okay, cool.
on that.
I thought that was restricted, you go around the point past 18, I thought that was.
Yeah, it's down to 20, it's restricted, isn't it?
Yeah, on the beach. So on the beach, 18 to 20.
Yeah.
Has got a summertime restriction with 1 March through to Labor with 1 March.
Doctrine.
But that reserve, which I forget the name of it.
So Tahu.
Yeah, that reserve doesn't have any specific restrictions.
Okay.
It's kind of access way to the beach, so it's not big enough, you can actually, it's like a big area to play on, so.
Yeah, it's not an exercise area, yeah, correct, so.
Okay. What's next?
Okay.
So,
Is there one submitted one's cats that need to be prevented from straying from their property?
You will discuss.
so there was general submissions, so, again, pages 147, in your comprehensive report, they just touch on the other submissions that we received on the consultation process, the enforcement of the bylaw, signage. Staff aren't recommending any changes to the policy or the bylaw around that. Some of those things are operational that we will pick up. So as we talk about with enforcement and signage, that those are things that we can go and make changes to where appropriate.
Yeah, and think about the signage with dock and where you go too. Yeah, some sort of comprehensive control of it.
So really moving on to then the bylaw.
So you're feeling that the flip flat on off season works well for you on the signage?
Yeah, really well. Yeah.
Just through the chair, is it, was there any comments that staff wanted to make about that section 9.2, the enforcement?
9.2.
Are we up to that sort of stage?
Yeah, that's what we're just pointing out. So there's any questions, absolutely. We're not recommending changes to enforcement. So we have 2 officers based in Whitianga, 1 based in the north of Coromandel, 2 in Thames, and 1 that covers the southeastern, and then there's a team leader. Probably 50% of their role is animal control. The other half is general bylaws like parking and freedom camping. So yeah, most of their job is doing this type of work. We can't be in all locations at all times, and that's often the request that we have from the public. They'll say there's a dog on the beach when it should be. Yep, there will be. But we respond to that within a certain time.
So bearing in mind that we have the freedom camping ambassador type people, some of the submitters here are saying particularly, things are under enforced and particularly over holiday type periods. Is there any, I don't know, government help, or because government pays partly for that campground ambassador, freedom camping ambassador thing? Is there any, do you people need more resource over that December, January thing to enforce it, to make people say, oh, actually, this bylaw is, that has got teeth? Sorry.
So that would be our recommendation. However, anything above and beyond what we're currently doing. So if you felt that there wasn't enforcement and you wanted more, we would need more officers, and that would come with a financial implication. What we're saying is our coverage right now across the district is good. We are at most beaches every day over summer at different times, but we can't be at those beaches the entire day. So we don't have someone dedicated to Whakatā Beach that will be there from 9 to 5. If we get a phone call, we'll be within an hour of that beach that we'll turn up to it, or we will proactively patrol it. Like I said, once a day at certain times, normally in the morning or in the evening at those changeover times. But if that, I guess if the elected members felt like there needed to be more enforcement, it would need to come to ourselves. So that would be in the plan as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's, is that within the bylaw, the amount of resource to enforce it, or is that outside the bylaw? Is that more resourcing rather than?
At adoption, if the steer today is that you want to more, then at adoption, we should be signalling in that you want to have a higher level of enforcement, and that would come with higher costs that would need to be anticipated in the plan and LTP process.
That you're not asking for that?
We're not asking for that. So, and I'm pretty comfortable having seen the data of when our staff are undertaking patrols that we're responding pretty well. But we have an LTP measure specifically to more urgent animal attacks, and we beat that. And the patrol on the beaches over that summer period, like I said, is a daily. Staff undertaking daily in most beaches.
Yes, so the chair.
Thank you.
If I read these submitters here through this, there's a little bit about it coming through clearly, and it's maybe at the smaller beaches. And I just question you, Brian, you feel that where you've got those current compliance people in the right places, is that where most of the issues are in those issues, in those places?
Yeah, that's a fair point, and we can shift the priorities without more resource. That would be, but yes, we may be at harder for this because when we go there, there's 2 people on the beach compared to when we're in Tyrol, Palma and Whakatane, there's hundreds of people on the beach. So we can sort of tweak that if we start to see emerging issues. We can be in a location
We can spend more time there.
more often, but it will be taken away from somewhere else. Unless we had the extra resource.
Hey, okay, sounds fair enough.
And just to clarify, that will be part of the bylaw. We'll bring back that as a separate resolution.
Yeah.
If we wanted, but it would be, that's not included in the.
Yeah,
bylaw.
no, I really like that. Yeah, thank you.
So moving through in terms of the section of general submissions, unless there is further discussion around individual parts of it, which includes education, theory, version, training, council information, I'd like to take that section as read. Can I ask if there's any further discussion on those individual parts? Otherwise, we'll move through and sign it off.
So we've looked at 9.2 was the enforcement, so you're now asking for 9.3 and onwards?
I'm asking to take 9.2 through to 9.8 as a block.
Okay,
So I'd like to please invite full discussion around any of those sections that you would like. I don't propose to work through block by block unless there is a strong move from the floor to take them one by one.
I support that we read and carry on, but I just want to make note of for Brian's team, to make note of those comments in there. As maybe, you kick off the year or something like that, you think give it a little bit of energy around those things to see if there is an issue or not. I think that's just really what they're trying to highlight, that maybe there is, maybe there isn't.
Yeah, so through the process, we've picked up the comments around enforcement, signage and education, and that we don't recommend any changes to the bylaws of that, but there may be some operational changes that we adopt from that.
That's good.
so, yeah, and there was a bit of a consistent theme about people who were submitting to us around the signage. And I see the resolution says for TCDC and DOC to work closely together. So I would really hope that over the next few months we get to see a way more consistent approach to those signs.
Yeah.
Particularly, I mean, people sent photos and you've seen ones where 10 metres apart are 2 signs, one a DOC and one a council one.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're agreeing and sometimes they're opposing, and it's like, yeah. And it just gives people the opportunity to say, well, I was complying with that sign.
Yeah.
So.
Pictures say better things than words.
The other comment that I would make in this whole discussion is that the cost of compliance and enforcement of dog policy is paid by the dog owners who are compliant and follow the rules. So the dog owners pay the fees for the non-compliant dog owners entirely.
Can I ask you, the chair, what's the percentage of fees paid? Is it 80%, 90%?
Oh, yeah, we're very high. I mean, we more and more lately we are coming across dogs that we weren't aware of that aren't registered. We can only talk about the ones that have been registered and whether they're re-registered. Oh, yeah, I'm not high 90s.
Yeah, yes.
But the fee breakdown, if we could take an average of 5,000 dogs and 80 dogs, right? If you took it.
In the chipping, is that still popular?
It's requirement. Yeah. So I would say that fees don't entirely cover the operation of animal control. So there is an element that would be general rate that comes into that factors for the non-compliance.
You've got to drop your sound on.
That's what I was going to say, because I was under the impression that our dog fees didn't fully recover all of the costs associated with yeah,
It won't be 100%.
won't be 100%, okay.
Pretty low, though, Brian, any idea how much? I always thought that we're still run that.
Alice looks like you.
Revenue policy is that it's probably only about 50%. Maybe I think a little bit higher though, because we had such an increase in dogs being registered over the last few years, so.
Cool.
Thank you.
So, what was the question
The mayor asked for clarification. That is cool.
No, I can't. It'll come back.
So just for clarity,
About the block of the 9
The-
point somethings through to the 9 point something.
Yes, sorry, that's my fault.
Yeah.
So can I just ask John's question and then I'll see if it's.
just really following on from the discussion that was happened a few minutes ago. So non-resident ratepayers who bring their dogs in don't have to register those dogs.
It's a national system, so they'll have to register their dogs somewhere in the country.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, but we don't receive any benefit from that.
no. So we'll take the revenue from the 5,000 dog owners that register with us. There's a levy that we pay to government that administers the national programs. There's a percentage that goes there. Quick breakdown is if everyone paid on time, which would be the $85 fee, we'd have $425,000 of revenue that comes in. So it's going to be roughly around 500,000 revenue that comes in, operating the £2, the staff, the vehicles, the levies. I don't think it will be 100%. It's going to sit somewhere probably around.
And Brian, is it a national levy across the country, $86 everywhere?
No, the levy is a percentage based on how many dogs you have registered. So the $85 is our fee, and a percentage of that will be, I don't know what percentage would.
Is it cheaper than Auckland?
Yes, yeah. So dog registration varies around the country. Some will take which Auckland does, a responsible dog owner license, which they have a subsidised fee if you can tick a few things like.
So on under 9.6, it talks about, unlike some other councils, our council does not currently have a responsible dog ownership program, something which could be investigated by council staff. But then underneath that recommendation is no changes. So is that something that would we have to ask that be investigated, or?
Yes, it's separate to this. I think we've done a little bit of anecdotal insight. The administrative side of that would be a little bit higher, or we're going to do a property check of all. So there's a criteria to be a responsible dog owner. You'd have to have a neutered dog, a fully fenced property, and have had no complaints over the last 12 months. So for us to set that up, there would have to be the site inspection of each property, and then keeping a good track record of whether those people have been issued infringements or not. And then what you'd have to look at is what would the fee be, because it's supposed to be a deterrent to bad behaviour. You get the subsidised fee. So we wouldn't have an $85 fee, we might have a $100 fee and a $140 fee, and if you're but certainly something we've looked at it in the past, and we could relook at it again if it became a priority.
A bit of a cost to.
There is a cost to it, yeah, and it's whether it drives the behaviour that we want.
Okay.
Too much at the moment.
Right.
So coming back to Delhi's question, if we look at in the packet, page 147.
Yeah.
Item 9. And we look at the block there, which shows 9.2 through to 9.8. I'm proposing to take that whole block and ask for agreement on that whole block. So if there are any further questions of individual parts of 9.2 to 9.8, so 9.1 to 9.8, now's the time. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Can I just ask a governance question of Ari, because it feels like it was about 100 hours ago that we initially did the mover and seconder, and we seem to be, so I'm just checking that our mover and seconder are still here, because I can't remember who they were. So if it was Greta, do we need a new one?
She's good.
It was the two Johns for each year.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
Yay.
And they're both still here.
But also glad that we've got the Johns.
I was wondering what we did.
Well, I guess we just have to sit as a new motion.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. In that case, let's proceed.
Okay, so going from 9.1 to 9.8, any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Thank you.
Yes.
Three.
Well, go back to your resolutions.
Yes. We'll just come back.
Hey, what is it?
We're going to be.
It's the hard copy that
Oh, hard copy.
But essentially, clause 1 of the bylaw through is the recommending changes for Matariki and the King's birthday, which reflect what you did earlier from policy. And then the schedule is the same that we
Just
gone through for the policy. Otherwise, staff are recommending no change to the text of the bylaw. And we've gone through all the submissions. It would really just be if there's any questions that come up.
And I'm happy to call out then what the clauses are about if you have some clarity as you go through.
So the proposal is that we are taking lost me again. Where did we start on that?
So you finished at the schedule 1 of the bylaw policy?
So we're in policy on dogs.
So up on the screen.
Bylaw, okay.
So now you're going to go to the bylaw.
Yeah.
Going to the bylaw. So we've done policy, we've done bylaw.
What is?
So that one was piece of paper down the bottom.
Yeah, turn that over.
Got it written right here.
So before the meeting started, you told us this was page 177.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Terry is at the bottom.
Bottom part, okay. Yep, got it.
So essentially what we're doing is covering the ground that we already covered. Yep,
So it's in the bylaw.
it's in the file.
There is a bylaw text, staff are recommending no change. 0 pages.
To the title, to the clause 2, the explanatory notice boxes. Commencement, or we put in the commencement date, maybe not. And then we get to the application of it, which is a technical legal matter, which is clause 4. 5 is the purpose of the bylaw, which is to provide adequate opportunities to fulfill the exercise, recreational and socialization needs of dogs and their owners, while minimizing any danger, distress, or nuisance caused by dogs. And then we get to the clause 6, which is the interpretation of meanings clauses, and we're proposing to amend that by including the 2 holidays that we discussed earlier in the policy.
Yeah.
So probably need a resolution along with that.
You need a resolution on part 1, or can we adopt the whole bylaw?
Well, they're probably separate resolutions, if you're happy to just say I or A or H. Because you're in the cover, if you go to the cover report, you've got a number of suggested resolutions. So just as we did this morning with the other 2 bylaws, it's on, yes. It's in the cover report, which is copies on your desk, Councillor.
So help me out with making sure I've got the right bits in place. See, because I've got
Receives the deliberations, is that one?
We're on to the next page, we're down here. It
Go
was
to the
just,
next page, clause 1 of the proposed
Good.
bylaw.
Delhi, we've just done here that, just all of the areas, but it also
I'm
now,
looking for the resolutions.
well, these are all part of the
That's
same.
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking
Clauses
at
and
page
safety.
177, we're looking for clause 1 of the proposed bylaws, no change.
Yeah.
And I just need agreement on that. So all those in favour?
Right.
Those against? Carried. So clause 2 of the proposed bylaw, which is page 178. Including those proposed amendments to include King's birthday and Matariki. All those in favour? Thank you.
Clause 3, which is, the Matariki changes are clause 6.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, clause 6. All right,
which we'll get to, so.
okay.
Clause 3.
Okay.
We're getting out of order again this time.
Clause 3, all those in favour?
Is the commencement date?
Clause 4, application, all those in favour?
Aye.
Clause 5, preliminary provisions, all those in favour? Clause 6, which is the public holidays.
Yeah.
Clause 7,
Yeah, I did.
Is an exemption clause. So that if the exemption is that the bylaw doesn't apply to working dogs or to registered dogs taking part in the obedience class, exercise or competitions organized by a club. So it excludes those from the bylaw.
okay. Clause 7, exemption, all those in favour? We did propose taking those in blocks, but
I'm happy if you'd like to do those.
did we do that? Okay, I think in the interest of time, so we're just going to go with clause 7 through to clause 11 on page 180. I'll take that as a block. All those in favour? Okay, clause 12 through to clause 16 on page 181. All those in favour? Thank you. Clause 17 through to clause 20, page 182. All those in favour? And what does that leave us with?
These changes to Tuatara and removal of Okuteri Beach.
No, everything that we discussed.
And I think, yes, there's an additional thing that says amend Schedule 1 of the proposed bylaw.
Okay, so amend Schedule 1, proposed bylaw, which includes Tuatara Beach.
And then there's probably another a notation and other.
I might actually see if I can try and share my screen size. Sorry, guys. Just sharing from my device, so I have to try and blow it up. Okay. So I've got the word change that was in the policy. So it will be reflected in the bylaw.
Correct. So that's the return back to status quo.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to plug that up far more. Yes. So that's around the status quo, not having a prohibited anymore. Then we have the hot water beach.
Sorry, just back on continuing, that includes rings and graves.
Yeah, it basically means
Yes.
what currently is in place now, which is the 400 metres either side of the quarry point.
Virgin and Grace.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Right.
And then we have the hot water beach, which was another change with the extension of the dog beach.
Yeah, that's the walking through.
Walk through.
Yeah.
They'll be happy with that. Those and those. Okay,
And then there's also a change, which we would have noted, should have noted, to remove that 5 meters, buffer.
I do have that one, just.
There it is. Yep.
It's probably for the list.
No, there it is.
So other than the staff recommendations, there are 3 extra ones, which
Yes.
is the 5 metres good to
Yeah.
thank you.
And one more.
3.
3, yeah.
Yeah. This is great.
All right, all those in favour? Those against? Carried. I'll be there again.
Oh, Martin. So does that mean,
Hang on, don't get too excited.
One second, want to make sure.
so does, just through the chair, does that mean because we've seen those changes that we suggested that in fact at our next meeting, it's just going to be adopting.
We'll probably bring you some fine wording.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to.
That just flags that we have the changes made,
Cool.
and we will make those changes. Yeah, the wording is there, we'll certainly highlight that for you.
No worries.
Oh,
Usually at this time, we bring a selection of dogs in for us to talk to.
Okay, with there being no further resolutions, no further discussion, I'll declare the meeting closed at 3 p.m. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for your input. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, team. Well done. Yeah. Thank you.